Hello everyone, I'm Captain Logan and welcome back to Primetime Crisis. It's time to talk some more Supergirl. The episode in question today is Changing, and we got quite a lot going on this episode. Lots of different characters changing in different ways, mostly, interestingly, peripheral characters and supporting players as opposed to our major heavy hitters. Certainly, characters like Alex and Jimmy Olsen are important to our, kind of Felicity and Diggle level supporting cast, but interesting that this is not about any of our mainstay heavy hitters, Kara and Martian Manhunter. The only superpowered person who is changing this episode really is Mon-El, and not in any kind of a physical way. We're mostly, except for Parasite, who I'll get to in a minute, we're talking about internal changes. We're talking about identity issues and characters trying to figure out who they really are or who they really want to be. And I like this episode quite a bit. Let's go ahead and start with the Jimmy Olsen stuff, because I was really excited to find out what his costume was going to look like and what his moniker was going to be. Like I said last time, didn't look ahead of time. I didn't want to know. I figured it would probably be a superhero alias we've heard of before, that it would be Jimmy Olsen put into somebody else's shoes, and that is indeed what it is. Somebody in the comments, I think last week, maybe spoiled it for me, and then I don't want to call anybody out. I can't remember if it was in the comments or if I saw it on some other webpage somewhere, but luckily I did not remember it going into this episode, as I was in the middle of other projects and have watched other TV this week, and so it just wasn't on my radar. And so when he emerges as Guardian, as Space Guardian, not as Guardian. When he emerges as the Guardian, I did get to be kind of surprised by that, and so that's cool. I like that as his superhero alias. It's cool. I always get excited whenever any early 90s Death of Superman era Superman stuff comes into this show, and the folks working on this show, especially Berlanti, who wrote this episode. This is a better Berlanti script than some other Berlanti scripts I've seen. He seems to really like this era. Guardian is an interesting choice, because, first of all, it's hard not to compare Jimmy Olsen to Diggle, because they both have a helmet, and I think his is less dumb than Diggle's dumb helmet, but it's interesting to put Guardian here, because we're dealing with Cadmus this season, and if memory serves, around Death of Superman era, when we had Guardian, he was the protector of Cadmus, and then he kind of, runs off and becomes his own hero, but at first he's kind of meant to just be the big bodyguard, security man of Cadmus, and of course we're dealing with Cadmus this season, but it's not the same thing that it is in the comics. So it's not Cadmus Labs, it's a scary underground terrorist cult, and but still, like a science cult. They're doing horrifying experiments, and I'm, as I keep predicting, pretty sure they're going to end up being responsible for Cyborg Superman, and that we're going to get to see Dean Cain, full-blown Cyborg Superman. Boy, if we don't do that at this point, because I feel like they've been seeding it really hard, I'm going to be kind of disappointed. So, with a little bit of seeding for Cyborg Superman, and I really don't think that's a leap, because when you introduce the name Hank Henshaw into the series right away, at the beginning of last season, diehard Death of Superman era fans are gonna be like, oh cool, we're getting Death of Superman. And when he ends up being Martian Manhunter, and then we have a disappeared Dean Cain and dealing with Cadmus, writings on the wall, that's gotta be Cyborg Superman. Now we've got Cadmus, now that we've got Guardian, I feel like we're really poising ourselves to have more of the Death of Superman kind of stuff, and as I talked about before, there have been predictions all over the internet that perhaps we'll end up with a Death of Superman scenario in this show, that when we do bring back the Superman into this series, it might be to kill him. Hopefully their Doomsday doesn't look like Batman vs. Superman Doomsday, and I say that because their Parasite does. A little bit. I do like that we go for full-blown gargantuan Parasite here, but he does look a little bit like the Incredible Hulk Abomination and like the BVS Doomsday. Anyway, I digress. The kind of unfortunate thing for me about Guardian is just that I don't think his costume is really worth the hype, and it might be, again, that they released photos of it online before it came out, but again, I've been kind of on blackout, not wanting to know those things, wanting to see them as they happen so that I can react to them more or less in real time. And the issue with it for me is kind of like, I mean, this is better, obviously, but kind of like the whole Kryptonian or like protective suit for Superman and Kara that Winn makes earlier in the season. He calls it a suit, and then I've talked about this, but it turns out to just be a crest. For whatever reason, we have this massive build-up to this where we act like it's going to be a big reveal, and it's not worth the anticipation. And here it's not, because I kind of thought we might get to see it at the end of the last episode, and then when we didn't, I was like, oh, cool. So they are promising something kind of spectacular, and it's fine. It's a Spartan-esque, but better than Spartan, armored costume. It's okay. It's just, the show kept teasing us about it. Even here, he gets to see it before we do. Winn opens the box, and Jimmy Olsen looks inside, and we don't get to see it. And then when we do get to see it, I'm like, okay, it's fine. He's on a motorcycle. Guardian always has a motorcycle. I think it's kind of odd that Winn doesn't talk to him about that. Like, what kind of vehicle do you want? Or does he bring his own I'm not sure where the motorcycle comes from. I don't know what he was talking about with, like, making it pretty, like, polish. It looks, and I don't have a problem with this, but, like, it doesn't look like an especially, like I said, polished costume. It's kind of bare bones. I don't know. It seems like he needed, like, just a few more hours, because what was he just putting the finishing touches on it? Why doesn't he just say that instead of it'll be ready when it's ready? If you go out now, Winn says, you will die. I love that scene, by the way. And I love that the argument continues into this episode, and that it's not oversimplified. These two guys seem like real friends, and they're challenging each other, and boy, I'm impressed with all that. But when he says, you will die, I'm like, okay, what is different about the suit now than a few hours ago? Because all of this happens pretty quickly when Parasite shows up at the end, and he puts on his new Guardian suit and goes out to try to help save the day. Like I said, that argument is wonderful. I really like that we stop to discuss the consequences, that there will be a price to pay for this. Winn says, I love how assertive he is this season, how proactive Winn is. Boy, he's become one of my favorite characters in the show all of the sudden. He looks wasted last year compared to what we're doing with him now, and I think that's fantastic. Using him as Jimmy Olsen's sidekick is a brilliant notion, because Jimmy Olsen does not want to be the sidekick anymore. And there was talk about that last season, and this seems like a natural... At first, I thought it was a cool idea. It didn't occur to me, though, that it was the natural next step in his character evolution, and now I think it absolutely is. I'm really excited about it, actually. I think it's really cool. And so I like that Winn stops everything and says, you have to be ready to pay the price for this. And he's got this speech that seems almost pre-written, and I love how Winn acknowledges that, and he goes, okay, that's a pretty good answer. And then Winn cooperates and he gets to be Guardian. I think that's really cool. I also like that we have a real concrete reason, and this is the obvious reason, this is what it should be, but that there's a real concrete reason at the end for why they feel the need to keep Guardian a secret from Supergirl. That we've got to make sure that we really know what we're doing because we're experimenting right now. And Kara is, I love this line where because Wynn questions it. First of all, I just like that he questions it. I like that it's not just a given that, of course, we're going to keep a secret because it's a TV show and we got to fill 22 episodes with some kind of drama. I really like that it's not about that. I mean, certainly it will create drama, I'm sure, as it moves along, but maybe more, organic drama. He says, Wynn questions it and says, do we have to keep it a secret, or you should? That seems wrong. And Jimmy says Supergirl could stop us. She will tell us to stop, and I love this line, and she could stop us. She could make that happen. So everything about that I thought was really quite good. I'm also surprised that I liked the Mon-El stuff as much as I did, and that it's not yet another easy and kind of paint-by-numbers character arc for Kara like we've had in really 3 or 4 episodes this season. I've been seeing complaints about that in the comments, and perhaps I've been a little bit too easy on some of it. And I've noticed it too, and I have complained about it to a degree. But it is true that a lot of the episodes this season have been she's being really oversimplified in her thinking and acting kind of childish, and then at the end of the episode, she learns a big lesson, and it's and the problem is, the kinds of big lessons she's learning are things that you would think you would need to kind of learn gradually, that would take time. We are, like we do a lot with these kinds of shows, having a little bit of a difficulty balancing the singular episode format with the ongoing long-form storytelling format. And I like that this episode, she is kind of the stalwart, steadfast hero that doesn't need to change, and that she gets to be the example for Mon-El. She still doesn't do everything perfectly. She still seems like a person. And again, I'm surprised that I'm saying this. I like the bit where she says, where she calls Mon-El out again, almost just based on his race. She almost says, well, of course you're being irresponsible and you're selfish and you're all just out for you because you're a... And then she stops because she doesn't want to sound racist. And he says, you were going to say Daxamite, weren't you? And yeah, that is what she was going to say. But what I like is, and I don't want to say she's exactly vindicated for thinking that way, but he is a stereotype right now, or at least until he takes his opportunity for change at the end and decides to try to be the hero. She has a hard time not thinking that, not going there, because she wants to believe that he can become more than the sum of his parts. But right now, he is kind of justifying her apprehension about him simply based on what she knows about his people. And of course, it's a real fine line between that and racism, as a word that we throw around really willy-nilly, really loosely in our culture. Stereotypes come from a place. There's often a grain of truth, and that doesn't mean that every individual that seems to embody a stereotype is really that just because you are of a particular background or whatever, that you must be this way, of course. But he's embodying everything she's ever known and heard and learned about the Daxamites, vilified in her culture, and so it's hard for her mind not to go there. That doesn't make it okay if you want to call that stereotyping, or if you or if you want to say that's profiling, but this is on him. And so I really like that starts to get his wheels turning, and then it's Alex who says, "Oh, I don't believe in you. It's Supergirl who believes in you," and I buy that. I think that was true in that moment. I also like that because he's trying to be, I guess setting the stage. He's being an enforcer for street thugs or a gang or something, and he's just to make some money. And because he doesn't really have any values, he's not about anything but figuring out how to make his way in the world right now, but again, not based on any kind of morality. And Supergirl says, you know, you can't use your powers just for yourself. That goes against everything we believe in. And he says, no, everything you believe in. And for a minute, I was afraid that the episode was going to once again have her go through the character arc of, oh, he's got to go his own way like last episode. But what he's realizing as the story progresses is he's not about anything. He doesn't believe in anything. And I like that he says, I don't have to use my powers to help people. You know, what is wrong with my doing something else with it? It's almost as if, and we don't go back to this, but it's almost as if he's taking the lesson from last episode and trying to apply it to a situation where it doesn't apply. Where it's like, well, you told me that I could be anything that I wanted to be. Oh, but there are responsibilities. You know, you have these, at least from Kara's perspective, you have these abilities, and people, if you see someone around you who is hurting and you can help them, you have an obligation. You have a humanitarian obligation, or call it what you will, since we're dealing with aliens, to help that person. And he comes around, and like, I think that this is a more believable character arc for him than we've had for Kara all season. Something else I really like with this episode is not everyone is rewarded for accepting their changes, be they changes that they are undergoing that they can't help, like Alex, who is exploring her sexuality, or like Mon-El, who has a choice. And of course, Alex has a choice too to act on that or not, but she doesn't have a choice in how she feels, of course. And with Mon-El, he is deciding to make a change, and neither of them are rewarded for that at the end. I think that's really interesting, and I think that's wonderfully realistic. We have and they're not punished for it either. It's not, oh, you should not have allowed yourself to grow and change. There are consequences to everything, and sometimes even when you make the right choice, and sometimes the right choice is worth these complications and difficulties and struggles, of course. And I just like that it's not tied up in a bow at the end. I don't really get the Cadmus thing at the end, that the Cadmus lady, who is just what I'm going to keep calling her because I can never remember her name. The Cadmus lady is sitting in a car, and it's almost like they planted bait while he was walking down the sidewalk and knew, because he had undergone this character arc, that if they planted a homeless person there that was mumbling to himself, Mon-El would see that guy and be like, oh, do you need help? And then he would be able to electrocute him or use whatever that thing was that dropped him, and then they could nab him and take him back to Cadmus. Really? Okay. I don't really understand that whole setup. That seems way too easy to me, but whatever. But what I like about it is it's no good deed goes unpunished. As soon as he decides to be a superhero, it gets hard, and he's going to have to learn that maybe it's worth that hardship. Or maybe he will not accept that, and he'll go the wrong way. I don't know. I don't really have a prediction for what's gonna happen with him with Cadmus. I guess it's possible he could turn into Cyborg Superman. I kind of hope that's not where we're going, just because, again, I really want to see Dean Cain get to be that. But it is possible that there's maybe some kind of a cloning thing that happens. They might use him in order to make one of, the kind of comic book Superman clones or something. There's a lot of different mad science stuff in Superman that you could do with that. We have been dealing with a lot of big, current, modern-day issues this season in Supergirl, and I cringed a little bit at the beginning with the climate change thing, because I thought it might end up being just kind of a heavy-handed environmental message, and I like that it's not that. We're not even really talking about it that much, as far as like one way or the other, vilifying climate change deniers, or or saying, you know, the Earth is doomed unless you do something about it right now. Like, it's just there. And there is a climate change denier that's in this, and, you know, a bad thing happens to him, but a bad thing happens to the extreme kind of doomsday prophesizing climate change guy also when he becomes Parasite. So, like, I don't think that the episode is making a big grand stand on this. And of course, it makes a lot of sense to deal with climate change in this show, I think, even though it is, you know, a big kind of hot button modern debate, because it's the same debate they were having on Krypton. I also think that it's kind of subtle about that we don't come out and talk about that, but it seemed real clear to me that that's what we were doing, where this guy is like, this guy is sort of Jor-El, where he's spending every waking moment trying to solve the climate change problem while having to deal with deniers, people claiming that that climate change is not an issue, and he's obsessed, and it's taken over his whole life, and I think that's kind of neat, actually. That we might be dealing with a similar thing on a you know, a longer timetable than Krypton, as Krypton was. That, you know, we're destroying our own planet, and of course that's a thing that. Or at least from that guy's perspective. So anyway, I like that a lot, and that actually kind of works. Parasite is odd because, I mean, once again, it's another major Superman villain that Superman hasn't dealt with yet and Supergirl deals with first. That's not a big deal to me necessarily, but we have had a curious number of them, and it kind of makes me wonder what Superman's rogues gallery looked like before the show, exactly what characters he had dealt with, because most of them, besides Lex Luthor, maybe we've only had a couple, but they seem to be kind of some of the more B or C-list characters. She's got her own Bizarro. Before Superman had a Bizarro, she's got her own Parasite. She's got Corbin, Metallo, so like the big heavy hitters, and she's got her own Brainiac with Indigo. I don't know if there was a Brainiac in Superman's world before Indigo. There might have been. I don't know. But anyway, so you got Parasite, and he is created by a parasite. So there's like a Wrath of Khan Seti eel that goes in his ear and is a parasitic organism that transforms him into a parasitic organism. And I thought that was kind of an odd choice, really. And it's kind of amusing how we turn him into the big giant parasite that is just too much of the wrong alien DNA in him at once when he touches both Supergirl and Martian Manhunter, and now he's big giant scary parasite with another kind of alien mouth that comes out. I think Parasite. Maybe Parasite has the second mouth sometimes. I know he often has, like, several sets of teeth. I don't know if I've ever seen a second mouth that comes out like that. But maybe that comes from somewhere. I don't know. I haven't read a lot of stories or seen a whole lot of things with Parasite. But anyway, so I like that he's still on about the same thing he was on about before he became Parasite. By the way, that actor is the guy who plays Ethan in Lost. And as soon as we saw him, I was like, oh, he's going to be the bad guy this episode. I know he's not evil yet, but he's gonna turn into something, and he absolutely did. I get kind of excited when an actor I'm familiar with and I like, character actor, ends up being one of the major bad guys in a thing like this. So I thought he was a really good choice. That was cool. I think overall the villains in this show have been a little bit more, not all of them, but have been a little bit more complex and had more solid motivations than a lot of the Arrow and Flash villains. And this one was no different. I mean, he certainly is under in influence, and as Supergirl says, he's sick, and he undergoes this tragic change, and of course his is a physical one, but but I liked it, yeah, kind of like with Gotham this week, with Michael Chiklis's character, Captain Barnes. We have characters who are under an influence, and it's not generically just they're mind controlled and whatever the thing inside them wants, that's what they go after, or they just turn into like a really gross simplification of whatever their big beef was, whatever they were on about. It's a little better than that with both of these situations, I think. I mean, I'm not saying that he's like a really fascinating character or anything, and I don't even know if he really has a choice in the matter. Like he's... You know, he's got to feed on... I'm assuming he has to feed on people to survive. Like that's how he's getting his powers. But I don't know if he could really stop what he's doing with his obsession, or if that's just what the parasite does to him in transforming him into a parasite. He's not, you know, the most interesting thing in the world. But anyway, okay, so then I guess we should also talk about the Martian Manhunter, Miss Martian bit. So she gives him a blood transfusion, and he doesn't realize yet that she's a white Martian. And she apologizes to him because he would not want, I'm assuming that she apologizes because he would not want white Martian blood in his system. What's odd about that whole thing is, first of all, there's no discussion about from anybody in the facility about Martian blood types. Like, okay, there's only one other Martian that we know about, so Alex goes and gets her. And that's the only chance he has to survive. And so, since there aren't any other Martians, another blood type wouldn't matter because there are no other blood types. So maybe that's why we don't talk about it. But you'd think that there'd be some concern that, well, it's going to be a risk. Like, what if their blood types don't match up? And he rejects it, and then we're back to square one, or the rejected blood that gets in his system is enough to turn the tide and kill him. We kind of act like, as long as we get this blood, he will be fine, case closed, game over, and they don't even know anything that much or anything about Martian anatomy. So it's really difficult to swallow that there wouldn't be some concern, and that we shouldn't maybe play that up for some tension. Especially because, unbeknownst to anyone but Miss Martian and the audience, she does have a different blood type. Probably she has white Martian blood. Like she has a different skin color. You have to assume that. Well, okay, the different skin color, of course, doesn't necessarily denote different blood, I guess, because obviously people on Earth have lots of different kinds of skin colors, but I would figure that her blood is different. Maybe it's not, I don't know, but the white Martians seem like, what I'm saying is, they seem like almost a whole other species. They're a lot bigger and they look different. So I would figure that there would be kind of a risk there, and maybe he will pay for that later. Maybe getting her blood in his system will do something to him. I don't know. Or maybe they are compatible and she knows that. Who knows? But I just thought it was a little bit weird that there wasn't some discussion about that, and that blood, you know, transfers okay. What else? I'm trying to think if there's anything else I need to talk about. I think that's most of the big stuff. I didn't talk a whole lot about the Alex subplot. But once again, that's being handled with kid gloves, and I'm surprised that I'm liking it as much as I am. Alex, of course, is falling apart, and in the moment, I kept finding places where I could have seen it going south real hard and her becoming incredibly unsympathetic, and she never totally does. I mean, I thought it was maybe going a little bit too far to have her not go to work at the end. At the same time, she's having this complete breakdown in Crisis, and she even says it feels like she's a child again. And I like that we talk about it that way. That her sexual preference is a thing that she's discovering so late in the game. I also like that she's not 100% sure if it even is a difference in sexual preference. It's just about this one person. And when this one person rejects her, she once again completely questions everything. I mean, I love how fragile she is and how believable that is. And I also like that we don't throw Sawyer under the bus, because she has a really good reason for not pursuing this. And I don't think it's what Alex is saying. I don't think it's just she doesn't like her in that way. She maybe could come to like her in that way, but I think but I like Sawyer's explanation when she says, you know, I never date anybody right off the bus, or right off that's just gotten off the boat. Those relationships never. She's too fragile right now. And I was kind of impressed with how that was handled. She's, of course, a little bit unfair to Kara early on, but she apologizes for that, and they have a conversation about it. And I never mean to come off like I don't think characters should ever do anything irrationally. Obviously, human beings make mistakes and we do irrational things, but you want people to act like people, and you want there to be consequences for those things, and you want characters to not be like vindicated by the show for immature behavior. And I don't think that's what's going on here, and I was impressed with that. So, I mean, Kara is trying to be supportive. This news just came out of left field, and she's not sure what to do with it. That's totally understandable. At the same time, Alex's feelings, I think, are also understandable, where she's... It makes sense that a person in that situation would oversimplify everything, where she really needs someone to completely support her and be okay with what she's feeling and what she's thinking about doing right away. And feelings are more complicated than that. Kara obviously is fine with it, but at the same time was blindsided and isn't sure what her response should be. And she can tell how, again, fragile Alex is, and sometimes it's difficult to know what to say or what to do in that moment. Anyway, that was it's handled pretty well. I really expected this to just be, you know, they're dating, her and Sawyer just immediately getting together, and us and the show kind of sweeping under the rug whether or not that was her sexual preference in the first place, where like maybe she was bisexual all along. Like, I really liked it. It's that there's a crisis there, that we're getting to see someone that late in her life, and in a world that you know more accepts that that kind of lifestyle and alternate sexual preferences more than it ever did before. That, you know, of course there are still people who, you know, discover these things about themselves late in the game, and that she was kind of an asexual person who is suddenly finding herself interested in a kind of person. And I like that we're getting to see that played out, and I like the way we're taking our time with it. And I like the way that it's thematically related to other subplots that have nothing to do with that, but are still about people with existential quandaries and people trying to find themselves and decide who they want to be and what their identity should be. And I think that is a thing worth exploring in superhero fiction, that's so often about dual identities and about trying to balance a heroic lifestyle with a social life and that kind of thing. So much more thoughtful than I would have expected from this kind of program. Anyway, thanks a lot for watching. Sure appreciate it. I will see you again with some more Primetime Crisis. Got Arrow coming up for you pretty soon. Supergirl again next week. We've got the big 4-part crossover between all the CW shows coming pretty soon. I'm talking to Rasco. He and I will probably try to cover those all together unless they play like 4 different episodes, in which case we will just continue doing the solo Crisis vlogs. Anyway, thanks again for watching. Sure appreciate it. I'm Captain Logan, and I'll see you next time.